This is Tobe Hooper's 1979 Salem's Lot, a fantastic fright film, total nightmare fuel for the boyhood vast that kick-started my love for scary movies. This is the 2004 remake. Saw it like 20 odd years ago. I thought it sucked balls back then. A toothless travesty of trash. But was I being too hasty? Is it really that bad? Well, it looks like we've been left hanging with the new 2023 version of Salem's Lot. Missing in action. Damn you, Warner Brothers. You forced my hand. I have no choice but to take a second look at 2004's Salem's Lot adaptation and see how it stacks up against the original. Can it hold its own? Well, there's only one way to find out. Incidentally, this one, Larry Cohen's 1987, A Return to Salem's Lot, is absolutely diabolical. Nothing to do with Stephen King's original story or Tobe Hooper's film. This guy Barlow, he's not even in it. Cheeky bastard. Anyway, cue the intro. Assalamu alaikum. What's happening, chillers?
Good evening.
How we doing? Am I the only person who randomly Googles Salem's Lot multiple times a week in the vain hope some news will drop about when this new film adaptation is gonna get a release date? I get the feeling the longer it's kept from us, the likelihood we're gonna be presented with a great scary horror flick is progressively diminishing. But at this point, for me anyway, it doesn't really matter. I just want to see it. They haven't even given us an official trailer, and the film was announced like 4 years ago and it went into production over 2 years ago. It subsequently had reshoots and it was bumped twice from its scheduled theatrical release dates. The first was September 2022 and the second was this year in April, where it lost its slot to Evil Dead Rise. And now, Warner Brothers have seemingly shelved the film. But that's not official, and the test screenings, they were quite positive. In any case, Halloween season has officially started, so perhaps we might get a Halloween surprise and Gary Doberman's Salem's Lot will get some sort of release. I sure hope so. But let's put all that aside for now. I've not come here to speculate, offer conjecture, or some dumb fan theory of a well-known IP. We do already have 2 previous adaptations, and that is what we are going to delve into. So let's talk about Stephen King's Salem's Lot. Okay, so this is not a review video, but there will be spoilers. I hadn't watched the 2004 version since it came out, and even though I absolutely hated it at the time, I had checked out the novel in the meantime, and much like when I listened to the audiobook of Stephen King's It, in that instance it did add to the viewing enjoyment of the film versions. So with that in mind, I checked out the 2004 version of Salem's Lot again and rewatched the awesome 79 version just for good measure. So now we can compare and contrast those adaptations, see what worked and what didn't, and my only hope is that Gary Doberman, he's done the same. There'll be scene comparisons peppered throughout the video of some of the classic moments from the original version to examine how well they are reinterpreted in the 2004 miniseries. I think it will illustrate perfectly how, when it comes to the visual medium of storytelling, it's all about intention and execution. So let's begin. Firstly, a brief background. Salem's Lot was Stephen King's second novel after Carrie. It was published in 1975. That's 2 years before his third book, The Shining. But after the success of Brian De Palma's film version of Carrie, there was great interest in making a movie adaptation of Salem's Lot, initially with George R. Romero slated to direct. It soon became apparent though that the scope of the story would be difficult to transfer to a feature film, so they opted to make the novel into a 3-hour, 2-part miniseries for television. Incidentally, it's anybody's guess how this new feature version will manage this feat with a relatively slim, by comparison, 1 hour and 53-minute runtime. Maybe that's why Warner Brothers have buried the film. Perhaps they've not made a fully formed, coherent film, and like I said, there has been some reshoots. And I said I wasn't going to speculate. In any case, that original version of Salem's Lot, now helmed by Master of Horror Tobe Hooper, debuted on November 17th, 1979 in America on the CBS network, airing over 2 nights.
If you thought you could never be frightened by a television movie, watch what happens to the citizens of Salem's Lot. Is something evil killing the people in Salem's Lot, or are they killing each other?
Run! No!
And on September the 7th, 1981, here in the UK on the BBC, that's how I first watched it. I remember they broadcast it straight after the 9 o'clock news. Unlike most others who saw it and who are around my age, it was a terrifying experience. I don't recall much from that age, but the experience of watching Salem's Lot as a wee nipper, it's definitely one of the few core memories I still have. It was 25 years before they had another crack at adapting the story in 2004, and they did it in the exact same format of a 3-hour, 2-part miniseries. This time I caught it on home video rental, and at the time was massively disappointed by it. A quick story synopsis. Ben Mears, a writer, returns to the small town of Jerusalem's Lot, Maine, after 25 years. He has come to write a book about the Marston House, a long abandoned mansion that sits atop a hill overlooking the town and has been empty for years. However, soon after his arrival, Ben begins to suspect that something is wrong with the town. People are disappearing. He soon discovers that the town is being overrun by vampires, led by the mysterious Mr. Straker and his partner, Kurt Barlow. Ben and a small group of survivors must band together to fight the vampires and save the town from being turned into a nest of the undead. I'm not going to talk too much about the novel itself, mostly as a tool for reference. I never thought the book overall was that spectacular or scary. I think the original miniseries is superior, if I can say that. I just did. It's solid, but King has this infuriating habit of padding out his stories, and this one is no exception. It feels kind of bloated and unnecessary in parts. It dilutes the main focus, you know, the good stuff, the vampire action. But that's just my opinion. Casting. So let's talk about the casting. On face value, the 79 version and the 2004 version, you know, the main players, you got some pretty blue chip actors in there. In the 79 version, you have David Soul as Ben Mears, James Mason as Richard Straker, Reggie Nalder as Kurt Barlow. I don't know who that is, but he's flipping terrific as the Master Vampire. You got Bonnie Bedelia as Holly McLean. Susan Norton. And in the 2004 version, you have Rob Lowe, Donald Sutherland, Rutger Hauer, Samantha Mathis, and there's some other notables in the supporting cast of both versions. So all pretty comparable there, right? Well, not really, and I don't really blame the actors for this. It all comes down to the way their characters have been written and the screenplay they're working from. I'm guessing one of the motivations behind redoing Salem's Lot in the 2000s was to do an adaptation that was closer to the novel, and well, it kind of is. People do complain that there's too much missing and changed in Tobe Hooper's version, and I can understand that, and if you had read the book before seeing it, you might deride the fact that characters and subplots are left out. But books and movies are totally different beasts. I feel like as long as the essence and the tone of the main story remain, I say it's necessary to strip away as much as you can. Tobe Hooper's version is far more suspense and horror orientated. It's essentially a story of good versus evil, a town being taken over and the population being turned into vampires. Whereas the newer version, it chooses to follow the more realistic and complex approach of the novel, with a larger cast of characters, including more of the subplots and themes, but it's at the expense of the horror and the atmosphere. And this is the biggest criticism I have, and what makes the 2004 version a failure. It's just not scary. Let's look at the portrayal of Ben Mears in both versions. David Soul is totally convincing as the writer who returns to Jerusalem's Lot, drawn back to the town by a terrifying experience in the Marston house when he was a boy, haunted by it. His character is defined by the fear he felt from that formative, scarring experience. The guy is shit scared from the first time he appears on screen, standing outside the Marston house, and that's basically his demeanour all the way through. And he plays it great, man. It has the audience unsettled right off the bat, if you pardon the pun, as he's the avatar you were attached to throughout the story. Incidentally, in the original version, David Salt only explains that pivotal childhood trauma in a very short scene with his high school English teacher, Burke. It's a very brief but powerful and kind of chilling scene.
I went up there once, on a dare. You know how kids are. I was sweating scared. I sneaked around. Got into the house.
What did you see?
I think I saw Hubie Marston hanging by his neck. His face green, his eyes puffed shut. And then he opened his eyes. He looked at me. And I took off. And I ran as fast as I could. I've never forgotten that. There was something, a feeling of... Jason, do you believe a thing can be inherently evil?
Whereas in the new version, it's told mostly through a flashback that's spread throughout the story. And like the novel, it's given quite a lot of attention and focus, but it's not nearly as affecting. In the newer version, Rob Lowe is Ben Mears, and I don't mind the guy as an actor, but he's just super low-key in this, just bouncing around through the events happening around him, not really reacting much to anything, staring up at the Marston house, barely emoting. The only time he seems genuinely scared is in a scene where he's locked up in a cell next to Floyd Tibbets, Susan Norton's jilted lover. Floyd's been bit and turns into a vampire and squeezes himself through a grate between the cells to try and get to Ben.
Look at me! Look at me, Mears! Invite me in! We'll finish this fight!
Some serious Eugene Toombs from X-Files vibes going on there. Straker and Barlow. The biggest difference, and I'm sure you all know this, in the Salem's Lot novel, Barlow is this seductive figure, sort of a European Dracula type who speaks and manipulates his victims into wanting to become a vampire. And in the original miniseries, Barlow is basically a growling monster. And much scary in my opinion. In the 2004 version, Rutger Hauer's performance goes back to the source material, and he is much more aloof and mysterious figure.
Yeah, that's too bad.
And even in full vampire mode, barely elicits any actual fear from the viewer, which is a massive fail for this version.
Piss off!
And Rutger Hauer is a terrific actor and can be scary and malevolent, The Hitcher being a prime example. Straker, who is Barlow's human familiar, his servant who is preparing the way for his master's arrival, gets a much meatier role in the original. A few of the important dialogues that Barlow has are now delivered by the amazing James Mason, who gives a very creepy and intimidating performance.
Oh, you're the writer.
I am writing about the Marston house.
Ah, and you'd like to visit? Well, why not? Mr. Barlow is on a buying trip, but the moment he arrives, you'll enjoy Mr. Barlow. And he'll enjoy you.
I urge you to watch him carefully next time you watch Salem's Lot. He gives a very nuanced and layered performance. He says a lot without actually talking. He's really pained and conflicted by the actions he's been commanded to do, but he has no choice. It's masterful stuff. Mason's an absolute joy to watch in this. He's the business. Then we have Donald Sutherland in the 2004 miniseries. Another very fine actor, usually, but he's just awful in this.
Well, I happen to like it here, Ben.
And your partner, Mr. Barlow?
You a reporter, Ben?
Writer.
Well, if you're curious about the house, why don't you come up and have a drink one night?
To tell you the truth, Richard, the place scares me.
Well, then you never intended to take it, did you, Mr. Typist?
Thankfully, he gets killed long before the end.
Click, click, clickety, click.
He plays Straker as this eccentric, but he's so bland. He's doing all this evil shit, but he just doesn't come across as menacing. Even when he goes all bonkers up at the Marston house, he's mean, but you never get the feeling of this inner power and strength he's been given by Barlow, like James Mason has.
Show me that. Is this a weapon? Is it?
It's probably already clicked, like it did with me. Donald Sutherland, Rutger Hauer, vampires. Feels all very familiar. Flipping Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Ah, baby horror, no! Makes you think they had no intention of making this version scary in any way. And you know what? I really don't think they did. Just look at who they drafted in to helm the two versions of Salem's Lot. The original, the first choice was George Romero, but he didn't feel he could work within the constraints of television, and they managed to get Tobe Hooper. These are respected horror directors who have both provided seminal, game-changing, all-time classic horror films. It's obvious they wanted their version of Salem's Lot to be grounded in the realm of horror. Same with the It miniseries. But who did they hire to direct the 2004 Salem's Lot? Mikhail Solomon? Ostensibly a cinematographer turned TV director. He did direct Hard Rain with Christian Slayer, which is a good action heist film, but we're talking about horror pedigree here, and aside from being the director of photography on Arachnophobia, it's a questionable choice in my opinion. It feels like he was just hired to shoot the script. There's not really a vision or style on display. Contrast this with Tobe Hooper, who creates an eerie atmosphere of fear and dread that just builds right through the running time and is punctuated with some heart-stopping scenes that chill you to the core. Heck, even the non-horror scenes pack a punch. Like when Cully catches his wife Bonnie with her boss Larry Crockett and gives him a double-barreled scare.
Just hold it, Larry. Hold it steady. Steady, Larry. Don't move, don't move. There. You see how much self-control you can have? You're doing fine, Larry. Just fine.
That leads us nicely to the fun part of the show, where we'll stack up side by side some of the most iconic scenes from the original Salem's Lot and how they were rendered in the 2004 miniseries. Enjoy.
I don't like it. I mean, it's really strange. It feels cold.
The first scene comparison we want to look at is near the beginning of the film, where Ned Tibbets, for some reason his character is called Floyd in the 2004 version, but anyway, he and Mark Ryerson have been hired to make delivery of a shipment to the Marston house.
Let's just get it to the Marston place. Get rid of it.
The mysterious crate actually contains Barlow, the master vampire.
I'll go away to make $50.
Straker has ordered the transportation of the crate under the pretense that it's an antique sideboard.
It's cold in here.
Yeah. Sure is. It shouldn't be.
The scenes here show how the evil force contained within the crate has the ability to supernaturally affect its physical surroundings.
Hey, that thing is moving. It is moving.
Look at it! We're almost there. Now shut up.
And Tobe Hooper expertly creates a malevolent atmosphere of increasing unease.
I think Susie wants out. She's always emailing other guys.
Well, how do you know? Well, I set up a computer for her and her hippie mother.
So, of course, I got the passwords.
Contrast that here, where there is almost no focus on the crate and its contents, and we are left with a couple of dudes just having a chat about nothing, and this pivotal moment in the story becomes purely a functional scene showing how Barlow arrives at the Marston house.
Look, I'm telling you, it's not natural. It just ain't natural.
We gotta get it out.
Hubie? Birdie? Hubie Jr.?
Crockett's paying us $100 to deliver this crate. This place used to keep me up at night. When I was a kid, I could see it from my bedroom window.
I want to pry it open.
You can't, he'll hear.
Who?
Straker.
Well, I want to do it anyway.
Notice how the focus on the crate and its mystery is always central in every shot, and the character's anxiety is compounded because the scary crate is now housed in the scary location.
Listen. You hear that? Somebody's up there. There's somebody up there.
Curiosity is quickly overtaken by the desire to get as far away as possible.
Rats, probably. You heard rats.
With someone. Let's split.
The padlocks. We forgot the padlock.
Throw them down there. Here, the keys. Throw them down, too.
Where are you going? I want to see Hubie's bedroom.
But here, the crate is almost incidental. The historic reputation of the Marston house being haunted is now the only emphasis of the characters. The viewer has been given no indication that Barlow's arrival is a cue to the horror that is about to unfold.
Straker?
Let's get out of here. You heard footsteps. We both did, right?
The Glick boys shortcut home through the woods.
What was that?
It's just an owl.
I never heard one before.
Sure you have. Hundreds of times. Millions.
We shouldn't have gone through the woods.
It's a shortcut.
And this sets off the chain of events that leads the residents of Salem's Lot into their descent into darkness. And Barlow, he needs food after his journey to the Marston house. Again, Hooper fashions the scene with a heavy atmosphere of suspense and impending dread.
Hey, I'm going.
Wait! Danny, wait!
Where are we? The brook's right. Mark?
In this version of the scene, it's played more like a killer versus victim scenario.
Wait, I can't breathe.
Shot without Hooper's style or atmosphere. Feels like an old Hammer horror film, and though the killer in this case is mortal, Hooper plays it like it's a supernatural force that has come to take Ralphie. It feels like we're not in a vampire film anymore, it's a killer in the woods. It's scary for the Glick boys, but to me it's just an old dude in the woods who needs a flashlight to see and a thick winter coat so he doesn't catch a cold. I think I could take him easy. This is the beautifully crafted and iconic scene where Ralphie Glick, now a vampire, has come for his brother.
Danny. 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 Danny.
The way it's rendered here is very weak in comparison. It's a problem that keeps coming up with the 2004 version, where these key scenes have no impact at all, lacking any style and atmosphere.
You left me in the woods.
Ralphie?
I'm just messing with you, Danny.
Go away.
Everything about this is unsettling and scary, from the scratching on the window and the look of Ralphie with the smoke undulating around him, the way it's shot backwards giving an eerie nightmarish quality, the imagery along with the music. It has this weird hypnotic chilling effect.
I knew you were scared. Cripes, I was scared too. Not anymore. I ain't scared at all.
Pretty poor and unconvincing effects don't help. You'll see more of this as we go on.
Let me in, Danny. Don't let Mom and Dad blame you. Let me in, Danny.
All right.
Mike Ryerson is burying Danny Glick after his funeral. In both scenes, Mike is directed by an unseen force that compels him to open the casket. Here it's an eerie and haunting scene, like a lot of these moments in Tobe Hooper's version, totally without dialogue, purely built on atmosphere, camera work and music to create an ominous air of mystery, mood and tone, with an excellent horror payoff.
Staring at me?
This time, even though it's taking place in a graveyard, a setting that's spooky by default, they managed to make no use of that ambience, and every change they make from the original, like now having dialogue and using a digger instead of a shovel, it just drains the tension and sense of foreboding from the scene. And there is no payoff at all, it just cuts off.
Stop staring at me. Damn you. You shut those eyes! Damn you, shut those eyes!
The cemetery scene is where part 1 finished in its original 2-part broadcast, so I'm going to do the same. Stay tuned for part 2 where we'll go through some more scene comparisons and a bunch of other stuff. Thanks very much for watching. Why not like the video, make a comment and subscribe? It's Halloween month after all. Ciao.
Ciao? Ciao? That's a familiar Italian expression meaning goodbye.
I didn't know you were Italian.
I'm not. The word is.
So long, chillers.
Go away. Go away!